What would you say is the biggest challenge in your work?
The biggest challenge, probably like fighting imposter syndrome, like all of the time. Like it comes up again and again and again. And like, every time you do a little bit more, you achieve a little bit more, like here it is coming to kind of remind you that like, actually, like it makes you question yourself. It makes you question whether you're capable and worthy of doing this job. And I say that for a couple of different reasons. Like many, many years ago, all of the psychologists that you would see were white men. So it really is not meant for like a young Black woman to be doing this work. But like here I am. But even then, like you still got a lot of people who look at you and they think you're too young to be working with them. You don't know enough about life, or like, but you can't understand my experience, or maybe they think that they can understand your experience too much, or just I don't know, like it kind of hits up on your identities, and it always comes back to visit me that like, what are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. I think another thing that kind of hits up against imposter syndrome is like client progress, right? So like you can't just judge yourself and how well you do at your job because a client relapsed or had a depressive episode, or that doesn't necessarily mean that like you're not good at what you do. So the biggest challenge is just fighting imposter syndrome whenever it comes up. And I surround myself with people who uplift me, and I can talk to them about it when it happens, and get that little boost in order to go back to my job and do what I do and do it well, and continue working with people.
Welcome to the Imagine Exposure podcast. We have a very, very special guest. This next guest, definitely proud of her, but being able to see her entire story. She's a family member, but she's very credentialed. She is an expert in her field and someone who is going to do some amazing things in her specific vocation. So I'm very, very happy to have her. And the person that we have today is Dr. Kimberly Glover. How you doing, Kim?
Hi.
Before I get started, I have to say this story. I have to say this story because I know that lots of people have.
Okay. I knew you was gonna have a story.
But I think one of the things when I think about you, Kim, I think about determination. Someone who has a vision, and I've told you the story offline, but like I remember being kids, and Kim is several years younger than me, and even when we were, I don't know, me and my brother-in-law had to be our teens maybe, and even before that, you used to say, "I want to be a counselor. I want to be a counselor." Like no matter what, like this was something that you had, and you knew exactly what you wanted to do, and you walked towards it. And I think that that's encouragement for a lot of young people who have dreams and have goals, and sometimes for whatever reason, a lot of people will try to push them away from it, that sort of thing. And so you are seeing a walking visual of determination. And so I'm just so happy just to see you accomplish goal A, and then you're going to continue to do, I know, major things. And so our first question that we ask every guest out the gate is, who are you and how would you define yourself?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for saying that. Like that meant so much to me. And every time you tell that story, I'm like, I swear I do not remember that, but it must be true because like here we are. So aside from being your cousin, your little cousin, I am Kimberly Glover. I am a Christian. I'm a Black woman. A cousin, a sister, a daughter, a friend, and I'm a mental health care provider. Right now, I am employed as a postdoctoral fellow in clinical psychology, which just means I'm in the process of getting licensed as a clinical psychologist.
Awesome. What is your story as it pertains to work and vocation?
Okay. if I'm gonna start this story off, I gotta start it off in Orangeburg, like where we were born and raised. And I love Orangeburg. It like taught me so much about how to survive life. But I think growing up, you might probably can attest to this, but like we didn't have a whole lot of exposure to like seeing Black people in higher education and doctors and, you know, getting doctorates and just doing like really, really big things with the path of academia. And so I didn't know what was out there. Like I didn't know really what was out there. All I knew was that like I kind of had a skill set of like wanting to help people and wanting to talk to people. And by the time I got to high school, I was in IB and I took a theory of knowledge class, which is not totally psychology based, but it just talks about like how we think and you know how we make decisions and like things based on our culture, our emotions, our mental status, all of those things. And I just thought that was really cool. So I went to college at Hampton University, majored in psychology, got to learn a lot more about like what psychology was, what I could do with a degree in psychology, which honestly at the bachelor's level is not that much. But I was able to like talk and build relationships with my professors, and they were the ones to kind of help me decide about what do I want to do when I leave here? What do I want to do with this degree in psychology? At that level, you also don't have a whole lot of like hands-on experience. Like you don't get to really apply the things that you learn in college. So it was like, okay, I got to go to grad school if I want to really do this, if I really want to go far in this. So I applied to grad school, got into a 5-year program where I was going to be able to get my PsyD and I was going to be able to get a master's along the way to the doctorate. And I went through a lot. The 5 years ended up turning into 6 years. It was a lot of adversity. Like I don't even know that I've told you this before, but I got fired from my first practicum, my first like clinical hands-on experience, fresh in the program. My school closed when I was in my 4th year. I was devastated and was like, what is my identity now? You know, and had to move around, money problems, all sorts of things. But in the end, I got through it. I finished my work, my dissertation, and I graduated in the fall of 2021. So just a few short months ago. And from there, I started my postdoc at my current site here in Minneapolis.
Awesome. And I think one of the things I think hearing your story, there is an expert right now. Her name is Angela Duckworth, and she recently got a MacArthur Fellow. And one of the things that she would say is that the connector of success across all genres is what she would call grit, which is the power of passion meeting perseverance. And so with your story, like that is what success looks like. Like it doesn't look like a rosy picture or whatever. It's like there's adversity, there's one circumstance, and that's the real story. And I think that those stories, a lot of times we get more from those stories because of your willingness to talk about the ups and downs and that sort of thing. And we all go through that journey, that roller coaster. But what kept you there is a vision and a passion for what you're trying to do, and that's very important for young people to see. And so, what would you say is the biggest misconception of your job?
Ooh, you know, there are a couple of like really silly ones, like people think you have to be crazy to go to therapy, or like, you know, like I work with crazy people. They think I'm like analyzing, reading people's minds all the time. And that is just not what it is. It's not that mysterious at all. It is much more about like being in relationship with people. Like you really have to be dedicated to being in a relationship with people as a therapist and working with people to get to know them, to help them grow and to change and all of these things that they come in for. So yeah, the biggest misconception is that it's this mysterious mind reading job. And it really is not. I really just like, you know, develop relationships with people and talk to them.
Who would you say are the people in your vocational story in which you're most grateful?
Oh, I like this question because you can't do anything without people. Like you can't do anything without support in relationships. And I owe my relationships to like getting me to this point. At first, I gotta say my mom, um, who you've also had on the podcast, which
Absolutely, absolutely.
I love to I love to see her like talk about her thing. But my mama is a praying woman, and she got that from her mama, our granny, and like I know for a fact it was like those prayers that really got me through a lot of the hard times when I was going through grad school, and still up until this day, like I'm feeling the effects of the prayers of my mother, my grandmother, my family in general. I have to shout out my family for being so supportive. There's a couple of mentors who I've met throughout my journey. And then there's one professor, Becky Jones, Dr. Becky Jones, who saw something in me from like my baby days in grad school. And she really kind of put a term to what I had to offer as a gift. And I was like, wow, I don't know that I had ever put a name to it like that before. And that made me really believe in like, okay, even if things are hard, even if like I struggle in this field getting to my occupation, I have a gift and that can't be taken away from me. So keep pushing. So yeah, I appreciate those people for impacting my life.
And for those who are watching, when she said her mom, she's talking about hairdresser Duffy Glover. And she
Mm-hmm.
was on the podcast once for 12 or 13 episode. Go check that
Yeah,
out.
that was cool. Yeah.
How did your childhood passions as a kid prepare you for your adult rituals?
Mm. This is probably, you spoke a little bit earlier about me being determined, like even as a little girl. And now that I think back to it, like I think my passion as a kid was just being goal oriented. Like whatever it was that I was doing, whether it was like in school or in an activity or a part of an organization, it was just like, I want to do well at this. Like I want to give my best to this. I want to try hard at this so that I can like meet my goals. So I take that with me. Like I take all of those experiences and all the people that I've met, the things that I've done, what I've learned from just like striving towards a goal. And those are the things that like still kind of hold me as far as like me investing in my passion of psychology. And it's just like, all right, like, you got this degree, now you got another goal to set, like go for it. Yeah. So just being goal oriented.
Um, how would you explain what you do as a professional in one sentence? And how would you explain what you do as a professional in a word?
Okay. In one sentence, I would say being in relationship with people, um, helping them to grow and be well. In one word, I think I would say dynamic, just because like it really is about like a process of growth and progress and change. Like that is what is a continuous process of all of those things. So the word dynamic probably sums up my career in one word. Hmm.
I can only imagine some of the sessions, the life, the change, the transition as the dynamic change for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what would you say you love the most about your job?
Hmm. I most consistently love my clients, like the people that I work with. Like, I don't know, it's kind of a privilege, I think, to be in such an intimate place with people and like really getting to know them. Like people are being incredibly vulnerable when they come to see you. And that is a privilege. That is like a gift. Like, like it's kind of hard to achieve that in a lot of our outside relationships. So just being able to come and make time for yourself. And like I'm the person on the receiving end of that. Like even though I'm providing a service technically, like I get challenged by my clients. I get helped and like I grow as a result of like just being in relationships with the people that I work with. So yeah, definitely love the people that end up in my chair and working with me.
That's important. I would infer that so much of your job is working with people. And so like I can only imagine if you were in that position you didn't love people. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah,
a tough job. Very tough.
exactly. Exactly.
What would you say is the biggest challenge in your work?
The biggest challenge, probably like fighting imposter syndrome, like
Mm,
all of the time. Like it comes up again and again and again. And like, every time you do a little bit more, you achieve a little bit more, like here it is coming to kind of remind you that like, actually,
mm,
like it makes you question yourself. It makes you question whether you're capable and worthy of doing this job. And I say that for a couple of different reasons. Like many, many years ago, all of the psychologists that you would see were white men.
mm.
So it really is not meant for like a young Black woman to be doing this work. But like here I am. But even then, like you still got a lot of people who look at you and they think you're too young to be working with them. You don't know enough about life, or like but you can't understand my experience, or maybe they think that they can understand your experience too much, or just I don't know, like it kind of hits up on your identities, and it always comes back to visit me that like, what are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. I think another thing that kind of hits up against imposter syndrome is like client progress, right? So like you can't just judge yourself and how well you do at your job because a client relapsed or had a depressive episode, or that doesn't necessarily mean that like you're not good at what you do. So the biggest challenge is just fighting imposter syndrome whenever it comes up. And I surround myself with people who uplift me, and I can talk to them about it when it happens, and get that little boost in order to go back to my job and do what I do and do it well, and continue working with people.
And thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, that I think being vulnerable and sharing in that, and like I know this from like what we do, but like we always
Mhm.
brag about you, like from a family standpoint. And one of the
Mhm.
ways that I always try to encourage you in person, but also I encourage a lot of the young people that I'll be working with, even when I cast vision, right? I cast vision for what you just said. We talked about imposter syndrome, and there is a historic narrative, and we've talked about this probably in the past,
Mhm.
but Isabel Wilkerson, in her book Caste, she talks about the fact, and I'll summarize where she goes. But long
Mhm.
story short, that when we talk about African Americans specifically taking on white collar jobs, not even when you talk about what you're doing specifically for white collar jobs,
Mhm.
as
Yep.
late as 1930, only 5%, she would argue, of African Americans were in white collar jobs. Put that in context, our beloved grandmother, Louise Johnson
Mhm.
Johnson, was born in 1929. And so I always say, and my cousin just graduated with her doctorate
Yeah.
this year in
Oh.
2021. So that's you're all so, and it's not to put more on you, but just to say like what you're doing is historic. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
you're we call it Black history, you're Black now. And so like I don't know
Yeah.
how to encourage you, but like just keep doing it. Like just keep doing what you're doing, because not and it's almost unfair because it's like, dang, like I didn't sign up. I had to sign up for all this stuff. But the reality is like
Mhm.
the next generation of young Black women, young Black men, people from all different tribes, that sort of
Yeah.
thing, um, will see more as a result of seeing you. And that's what this
Yeah.
whole podcast is all about. Podcast is all about is I want young people to see more as a result of what people have already accomplished. And so you have already done a phenomenal job. I encourage you as your cousin, and just know that like we're rooting for you, and like the more you
Mhm.
continue to do, I think you'll be able to see more, because people will say, man, I can do that because I saw
Yeah.
Dr. Kim Glover, Dr. Kimberly D. Glover do that.
Don't forget the D.
Because don't forget the D. And because I saw that, now I can do it. And
Mhm.
so you are a part of that. So I
Mhm.
just want to encourage you that. So
Yeah,
and thank you for
thank you.
sharing that.
Yeah, yeah. Can I just say that, like, no, I think it's so really dope that you are doing this, and like just to be able to expose the youth to what they could be, like just so they could just know that it exists and they can see somebody who looks like them, who might be where they're from, and be able to say like, no, I could do that. Like that totally brings me back to reality. Like, like if I'm feeling like an imposter in the environments where I am now, just knowing that like there could be somebody who looks at me and that is going to give them what they need to be able to move forward, apply to grad school, do whatever it is that they want to do. Like that is cool. So to be able to have a platform to be able to do that, I desperately needed that as a youth. I can only imagine like what we could have done, what me and my peers could have done, just having something like this like at our fingertips. So yeah, no, that brings me back to reality.
I appreciate that encouragement. And the thing about it though, Kim, is the fact that we all now with cell phones, with technology, we do have it at our fingertips. But the reality is we all have a certain type of imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
We
Yep.
all will go into a social media platform, make them millions and millions and billions of dollars. Like, think about something like TikTok will give South Carolina State album out $1 million. Well, why are they giving South Carolina State $1 million? Because they
Really?
know they gave $1 million. And so they know that this is my interpretation. They know that the people who are changing their social media platforms are African Americans, young African
Yep.
Americans, their minds, and we're giving our intellectual property away. And so Grace to Cultivate is like, yo, like get on those platforms, start your LLC, start whatever you're doing, and
Right.
use that and leverage it as you're trying to build something for your own. And so I think a lot of times when we give away our intellectual property, that's a form of imposter syndrome too, of like not really critically assessing what we have in front of us and not just giving it away just for likes and clicks, but like, like you can, what is the thing that you want to see and like actually work towards it and it can happen, like, you know what I mean? And so anyway, so we can go on a tangent on that because
Nah,
that's
that's
all
all
of us.
facts.
That's all of us, but I appreciate you sharing. What
Yeah.
steps must a person accomplish to become certified or respected in this profession?
Oh, this is a good question and plays right off of what you was talking about. Like if you can see it, you should also know like how you can get there. So this is good. This is good. I would say you need to have a bachelor's. It doesn't necessarily have to be in psychology. It could be in any like social science usually. But after your bachelor's degree, like you need to like pursue higher education, whether that's like at the master's level or the doctorate level. You can choose between a couple of different types of degrees that you want to go into. Like it could be an EdD, it could be a PsyD, it could be a PhD. But once you do that, you are going to go through like at least 4 years of classwork, and then at least 3 years of like clinical practice. This is going to be the best thing for you because you get to kind of put yourself in these different environments, do different things, therapy, psychological assessment, and just kind of see where you fit. Like, what are the things that you like to do? Where are the things that like you are like, yes, I can see myself growing in this area. Because once you determine that, you'll get to go on internship in your last year of the program. That could be anywhere in the country, doing anything. And so after that, you will finish you have a research project, you have a dissertation to do. You would finish, you would graduate, you would do some sort of like postdoctoral supervised work. You would get licensed, and you just would have to meet whatever state requirements there are for wherever you want to practice. And yeah, after that, once you get licensed and you're practicing, all it is continued education classes, and opportunities. And then at the highest of the highs, like you could get board certified, which just means that like I'm advancing in this one specialty that I know that I'm really, really good at, and going to be very, very well respected at the board certified level. So that's kind of how you would get there.
Awesome. I appreciate you breaking that down, because there's a difference between general counsel and like someone who's credentialed, someone you can go to for a lot of the issues that I think we're dealing with the community and the culture in general. And it's very important to hear. I appreciate you bringing that down.
Yeah, agreed.
Another question that I think is a cultural question that we typically don't talk about is a question of determining our value and our worth professionally. But how does a person negotiate salary or the value of their services in the spirituals?
Oh, this is good. This is good. And this is also the area where I'm like, I needed more exposure to this. I needed to know this before I really dove into my career. But first, well, I will say in general, like whatever you are going to charge, or whatever you're going to get paid for your work, a lot of it is like location based. So like doing your research about like how much does a clinical psychologist get paid in Florida might be different than what it is in Los Angeles. So like you need to do your research to determine what is the standard based on my location. You also got to be realistic and do your research about like the type of setting that you're going to be in. So someone who works in community mental health, like I do right now, is going to be making a different amount than somebody who works in private practice, where they might not take insurance, like, you know, so like you just got to be able to select what it is that you want to do and what type of money that like you're comfortable making. I would also say just like skills to managing the money around the career stuff is like talk to people, like network with people. Don't be afraid to ask people about money. When I got up here, I was talking to my supervisor, I was talking to my mentors, I was talking to anybody that I could ask, like, how much money do you make? What is it that you do exactly, so that I can see like, okay, this much, you know, is worth this much, this worth this much, this much. But you gotta do that by realistically just talking to people. Don't be afraid to do that. And then like the other part is like you said, like knowing your worth and being able to, you know, realize that like, no, I have something to offer. And what I have to offer might be different than what this other psychologist has to offer. And therefore I'm able to like move forward with saying like, no, this is how much I want to be making. And that's okay. Stick with it, you know your worth, know your price.
That's necessary information. So many fields, specifically that one, information. Determining worth, determining value is just one of those conversations you just don't have enough of. They're very important, especially in highly skilled. Based on what you now know about your vocation, this is the time machine question. If you were to get into the time machine, what advice would you give yourself if you could go back on the first day of the job?
Oh. It's not like it's been that long ago, but I think I would tell myself like, Kim, you know more than you think you know. You know, I think once you actually get into you learn a lot in school. School is very necessary. And when you get into the part of practicing and like putting all that knowledge into like actual application, you get scared. Like you get scared, you start doubting yourself, you start doubting what it is that you know, that you've learned, that you've been trained in. And it's very easy to like just forget that you know more than you think you know. People like in this field, I consider that like people are the experts on themselves, but I'm the expert on what I know. And so, you know, even that, I will always have room to grow. I will always have room to learn, and that's okay. I still know a lot. So like, yeah, just to not forget that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
How do you one day prepare to transition from this role? Like, what are you thinking about in terms of in-game retirement? What does that look
Mm, yeah, the future question now. Okay. I, after this kind of part, as I'm transitioning to the next part, I think I want to narrow down a specialty focus of my work. Right now, I work in community mental health. So I work with a broad range of like presentations, clinical presentations, and I do assessments, and it's just kind of like all of the things. And I think I want to narrow down a little bit this thing of like, what am I really good at? What do I really, really love working with? Right now, I'm thinking that is like working with working with Black people, working with Black women, and challenging that imposter syndrome that I know we all feel. And like I want that to kind of be my focus, because I feel like because of my adversity, because of my process and experiences, like that's where I can do the most, that's where I can provide the most impact. So I think narrowing a focus, joining a group practice where the group focuses on the same thing that I'm focusing on, and then eventually being able to gain enough knowledge and skill and practice to start a private practice. And then if you really want to take it further than that, like I would love to own a group practice. I would love to kind of step away from the like clinician role and more into an administrative role where it's like I'm running the group practice that I cultivated, and I can kind of give back what I know, but like to other clinicians. And then I want to retire before I get burnt out. Like that's important. I think that's a thing that like a lot of people, I realize from talking to a lot of people that like you can get really burnt out in this work. So arrange your life, arrange your career so that you can, be able to retire and take your break, your well-deserved break before you are burnt out rather than after.
And at least you have that awareness. I'm sure that's very helpful as you start planning and you start moving. That awareness in and of itself, I think, is strength. So now our last two questions, almost coming to an end. The Cultivate Countdown. We ask every guest to look at different principles of their particular vocation that they would say. And of course, you can't capture all that you do and all the work that you put in steps, but there are some principles that you can say that these are Dr. Kimberly D. Glover isms. And I would love to see that connection. So what would you say are your Cultivate?
Yes, the Cultivate Countdown, the infamous Cultivate Countdown. I think I would put, since we've been talking about it so much, I gotta put number one, like you are not an imposter. Remember that, like you are not an imposter. You worked hard and you earned your spot. So remember that you deserve to be here. For two, I would say take care of yourself. It's hard to do this work without you being well, so you need to take care of yourself. And then three, I think this is something else we mentioned a couple of times, but relationships, like value relationships, value them in your work, in your life, in general. It's going to help you do your job a lot better. It's going to make it a lot easier. Value relationships. Yeah.
What is your motivational quote? We put out your meme. What's going to go on your meme for your motivational quote?
Okay. Oh, wow. I would say that adversity is really hard, but keep going because it's going to be, you're going to find some purpose and some value in it. That would be my quotes.
Awesome. Are there any final thoughts? Anything that you want to direct people towards, websites, anything that you would recommend? What are your final thoughts? Close out.
I would just say like if you're watching this and like you want more information, please reach out to me. I'm so happy to like be in a relationship with people who want to know more. I have no problem like making space, making time for that. So like reach out to me via email. I don't have like a huge social media presence and all of that stuff right now. But like I'm available via email. Just so hit me up, Glover.Kimberly93@gmail. And I would love to like invest my time in somebody else learning and growing and being able to do the things that I'm doing and beyond. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, as they would say in the old church, thinking it not robbery. To be with me, because I know that you have given so much wisdom and insight, and I do appreciate you showing that. So thank you for your time. You have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.